Welcome, risk takers and trailblazers. This is the Offbeat Path, where we celebrate those who dare to color outside of the lines of life. I'm your host, Bob Healy, and each episode, I'm going to be sitting down with a guest who's made the bold choice to veer off the well-worn road and carve out their own unique path. From radical career pivots to life-altering personal transformations, we're going to explore the stories of those who have embraced the unconventional. And here's the twist. We're not just about the highlight reel. We're going to dive into the failures, the scrapes, the stumbles, the moments of doubt that come with choosing a road less traveled. Because sometimes the most valuable lessons come from those sharp left turns that didn't quite pan out as planned. So whether you're contemplating your own big leap or just craving a dose of out-of-the-box inspiration, you're in the right place. The Offbeat Path is your reminder that life's most rewarding adventures often begin where the map ends. Get ready to challenge the status quo, embrace the unexpected, and maybe find the courage to blaze your own trail. It's time to buckle up, take a sharp turn towards a life less ordinary. This is the Offbeat Path. Let's get to it. No, look, I'm totally happy to have you here because you are Justin Reilley.
I am Justin Reilley. From whatever the internet says, I'm the tattooed yogi though.
You have like 25,000 Instagram followers.
No, 23.
20.
Who's counting?
Who's counting?
23.4K, like 23.4. So it's like, that's a story in and of itself. If you want to know it, if you want to know.
Yeah. I mean, actually that was, so when I was writing lists of questions to do here, I was like, how does somebody get 20? Like, how does that even happen?
Well, nowadays, like, everybody gets them really easily. It's crazy. But so I was on Instagram when it first came out. And I think the first picture that I ever took was like graffiti at the skate park. And it was like a weed leaf or something like that. And I was like, look at this funny graffiti, right? So I started posting like just normal shit with my kids and with my family and everything like that, and just like skateboard stuff. And then it was before people were like really utilizing it as like a brand type thing, right? So eventually I started following like other people who were actual yogis. And so I started posting like yoga photos. I had one of my students, she was a professional photographer, and she asked if she could take some pictures of me one day after class. And I was like, absolutely. So she took some pictures. She edited them in black and white. They were like really cool looking. She put all kinds of filters in Photoshop, but this is like 2011, 2012, like when it's not really something that people are doing that often. You know what I mean? So I started like just posting like little pictures of me doing yoga photo. I think the first one that was really popular was I did 8-angle pose, and I had like my hand up to my face, and it was like black and white, had this really cool aura to it. And it was really like, it got like fucking 15 likes or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. But I had eventually became friends with this guy named Dennis who owned a skate shop in Aruba, and he was married to Yoga Girl on Instagram, basically, who was like huge. She had huge following at the time. Like it was probably like 10,000 people or 25,000 people were following her or something like that. But me and her husband had become friends through skateboarding, and he stayed at my house when he got stuck in Philadelphia, and she invited me down to Aruba. It was really, really cool. Really, really cool relationship that skateboarding and yoga kind of brought me together. And then one day she shouted me out and Patrick Beach as guy yogis, because like all these female people were getting like a lot of people following them. And her husband Dennis was like, yeah, you should like shout out some of the dudes who like do yoga, because he did yoga too, and he just got done yoga training. So she like reposted a picture of me and posted a picture of Patrick. And I think I got 9,000 followers that day. It was crazy. Like my phone, like I had to turn my alerts off my phone. It was just like, like my phone was like literally, and I'm just a working guy. I was just like, I was at my job. And like, then I'm like, my lunch break, I would go to the skate park and I would skateboard on my lunch break. I just remember looking at my phone and it's just being like just followers. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. So I think I got like 8,000 or 9,000 followers in a day. And then, that was weird. Like that was really odd. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just keep posting the same shit that I always do anyway. And then I started getting asked to do like all these yoga challenges like back in the day. Right. So like Manduka would run these yoga challenges, and they'd be like, tag 3 of your friends. Everyone has to follow everybody. And like, you'll get fucking towel or something like that out of it.
Back when the algorithm wasn't as smart.
When there was no, like literally no algorithm. There was no algorithm. It was just whatever came up in order, chronological order. Remember chronological order? I do. So I did a bunch of challenges and stuff like that with like all those companies and, just got followers like that basically. And then I got up to 35 or 36 and then I stopped posting for like a year or so where I was just like super sick of it. And then I lost a bunch and they get all the bots to go away and all that shit. So yeah, it was weird. It's still really weird that many people follow me.
So Yoga Girl posts all your stuff.
Yeah.
You get like 35,000 followers. You stop posting.
Yeah.
You go back down to a measly 25, 23,000.
I think I got to like 26 and then like I was really burnt out on like posting yoga bullshit I'm still burnt out on it, like absolutely still burnt out on it. But I was like at a point where like in my life, it wasn't my focus and I was just like really over it. So you just lose some followers as you go, you gain a few, you lose a few and just, it gets to a point where it's just like, what's the point? It's tough. It's tough from a business perspective because now, like back then, it wasn't like I was utilizing it as a way to like really get business. But I think post pandemic, it's like, that's when like all of a sudden it mattered a lot more because that's how a lot of people started to like consume their yoga. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if you were a yoga teacher in the pandemic, like I was a little bit, I mean, I wasn't running a business, but I mean, like I think I've joked with you about this before. If you were a yoga teacher going through the pandemic, like 10 years later, when you've got all these people in like 200 hours, like you're like, you have no idea what like teaching to an entire screen of black, an entire Zoom screen of black screens where you can't see anybody and you're talking to yourself. Yeah. And like, I mean, and it's a big ego hit. We talked about this before. Like you're in a room teaching with 80 people and all of a sudden you go to nothing. Whoever's getting on Zoom.
Yeah, to nothing.
I mean, it's like not you personally, but like people we know.
Yeah, exactly.
Who just
it's incredible. It was incredibly challenging, but at the same time, I was trying to be very in the moment and like just adapt as everything was happening. I think as a lot of yoga studios and yoga teachers were doing, they were trying to figure it out the best that they could. So it's like you're just pivoting to all these weird things. You're like Patreon, and you got Zoom. Like I remember everyone was like going to Zoom. I was like, I'm not doing Zoom. I'm not doing that shit. I was like, I'm not doing it. I'll put stuff on Patreon. I still put stuff on Patreon to this day. You know what I mean? Like I know Raghu did it. Like me and him talked about it, and I know he just like pivoted away from it to better things, which is great. So it's like we were all trying to figure it out. And honestly, going through the pandemic, like I just taught outside every single day and it was awesome.
I remember.
It was fucking rad, dude. It was the best. I think it was the best summer I've had. I worked one time a day. We did yoga in a field every single day. No music, no anything. You just brought your yoga mat. We did yoga for an hour. Everyone did yoga. Then they went home. It was awesome. There was no fucking cleaning up the bathroom. There was no paper towels. There was no, I need a block. It was like, bring your own shit. It was awesome. It was really like, it was, I found that it was very community building and like really like brought people together, which was really tough in that time because everybody was getting so separate. So for me, it was challenging from a business perspective, but from like a humanity perspective, I thought it was really beautiful to see people still showing up for me and supporting me and like my business, like, which is me teaching yoga, but at the same time, like realizing how important they were to each other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your studio is like, it's funny because, I teach over in Philly and sometimes in Jersey, and people would be like, get this question too, like, well, where do you practice?
Yeah.
I'm like, I practice at, the way I would describe it is I'm like, I practice at this hole in the wall studio with no frills in like down near Pensacola.
Yeah.
Like
that's basically
in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Which, and it's like a bunch of really hardcore people.
Yeah.
And not all handstand monkeys or some of that.
And not hardcore in the fact of like hardcore, like tattoos, like music, but like
they're just into the practice.
They're just in the practice. Exactly.
And there's just no bones about it.
Yeah.
And they're all there to do the same frickin' thing for an hour or however long it is. And then you sort of roll up and you leave and maybe you say hi to a few people. But I always appreciated the vibe there because like as a busy person, kids, whatever, you go to some places, it's like roll up the mat, you got to talk to a million people. It's and for some people, that's that sense of community, right? I go to a yoga studio, I get my therapy because I see my friends, and I see the teacher that I like, and I stay after for 20 minutes, and that teacher talks to me, and I can tell them my problems, and that's great. Your communities, I've always found, was different because like a lot of those people were out the door as soon as everything was over because they were busy. But it's like when you would go to a punk show and you would see that person across the room and you give them that glance. Yeah. And that glance is everything you need to know. Like, we're cool. Yeah. We're good. It's good to see you, man. I'm glad. In that glance is like, I'm glad you're doing well.
It's a whole conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's that connection. And your community had so much, almost did like, I don't know if it did better financially, but from the outside, it seemed to become closer knit during the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Whereas many other ones sort of scattered.
Yeah.
And,
I'm definitely super blessed because the people that supported me like doubled down their support. Yeah. And also I'm, like you said, like I have this like hardcore like mentality when it comes to like my business, because it's like I don't want a big business. Mm-hmm. Like I come from like the Ashtanga like mindset of it, like where it's like you have one teacher, like you show up. And it's not about what the room looks like. It's about what you're getting taught. So it's like, for me, it sucks because I'd probably be more successful if I had a little bit more like designer skills or something like that. Right. But it's like, dude, I've always looked at it as like Fight Club. It's like you come in and it's like, it doesn't matter what the room looks like. It's what we're doing in the room is what matters the most. So it's like, it's the people who are in there. It's like, and I get to create the mood and I get to create, what the practice is going to, like what I'm going to breathe into the practice, but it's up to all of them to just come in, show up and absorb it. And luckily I'm really blessed to have people who care about yoga, not just yoga asana. Right. You know what I mean? And that's really what I think like kind of separates my students is like, and I don't even want to say separate because that makes it sound elitist because I don't want that to be the mentality, but it's like they give a shit about yoga. They care about being good parents. They care about being good people. They care about service. They care about not hurting. They care about how yoga has impacted them on a spiritual level, not just, oh, now I can like, yeah, cool. I can do some handstands. Yeah, I can do some really awesome tricks. But the people at my studio who can do awesome tricks are actually the most awesome people too. It's not the other way around where it's like, oh, the people who can do the cool tricks are usually the most vain. But it's like, mine's the opposite. It's like the people who can do the coolest shit are actually the nicest, most kind, generous people that you're going to meet. It's like their practice completely encompasses not just their yoga, but also how they are in their relationships, in their friendships, how they treat people. They're just incredible people. So it's like, I'd rather have more like 20 incredible people than 400 okay people. Yeah.
I mean, I tell people, like I tell my students all the time, like, you ever meet somebody who has a killer handstand practice and is also a jerk? Like the postures aren't going to get you to enlightenment. They help. Yeah. Like if you're doing them for the right reasons and because I mean, you quiet your body so that you can quiet your breath, so that you can quiet your mind, so that you can get really internal and start to ask that question of like, why do I do the things that I do? Yeah. Why do I make the same bad choices over and over?
Fucking tell me about it.
Why do I keep doing that?
But guess what? Just because you're a yoga teacher, it doesn't go away either. No. I think it actually happens more, which is even more messed up.
10 plus years into this practice and put me on the road behind somebody who doesn't move from the light within 3 seconds. And I'm like,
See, that I can handle them. It's slow drivers. I think my whole yoga practice is in my car. Like that's where my practice fails me the most actually is when I'm in my car. All of a sudden it's like yoga doesn't exist anymore. But I'm trying to like be obviously, and just like anybody trying to be better at it. But it's good to constantly be reminded that like the work doesn't end. Like just because you attain something, just because you get a cool pose or you have a status or, we start to have these years where I look back and I'm like, man, someone asked me how long I've been doing this for. I was like, wow, I've been like doing this for a really long time now. And it's like,
how long has it been?
I started teaching in like 2010. Like I wasn't certified in 2010. I got certified in 2011, but I was teaching my first like official yoga class that I taught was January 3rd, 2011.
Well, and you came to that, like, because you're I don't know if there's a normal yoga teacher story. Maybe there is. It's certainly not mine.
Yeah.
It's definitely not yours, because like you came to that through a way that was very, very different to the way a lot of people come into yoga teacher trainings. I mean, you know, because from what, I mean, you and I have known each other for what now? Jesus. Well, I met you the first time I met you was my yoga teacher training.
Yeah. And I was like doing a module at your teacher.
Yeah. I was doing this teacher training with like 8 other women, which was fine. I mean, I have 6 sisters. I was raised with women. I was totally comfortable. But to your point earlier, like when you're on Instagram and the yoga world in general, although I do think it's shifting a little bit.
Absolutely.
But at least when I was getting into it, it was basically like an 85-15, maybe, you know, 80-20, like split of like male and female.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I remember when all the yoga stuff came out with Bikram, and all those studios had talks about how it's proper to touch people. Yeah. And I remember the studio I was teaching at the time was like, we want to have a group meeting about how the appropriate way to adjust people. And I called up the head teacher. I was like, hey, listen, let's just call this what it is. I'm the only guy that teaches at your studio. Why don't you just sit with me? Because in general,
that's just going to make people the most uncomfortable.
A guy touching a woman, you know, and so like, let's just call it what it is. I'm not offended by it.
Absolutely.
Let's sit down and you can talk to me about how I comport myself. I'm happy to have that conversation. But you came in and I remember it was like week 4 or 5 or whatever. We're deep into it. And I'm like, yo, there's a guy who's got punk rock tattoos. And
curses the whole time, like start to finish. Tells you everything you're learning is wrong.
As Alex Holmes would say, curses like a sailor. Yeah. And I just remember being like, it was like a breath of air. I was like, oh God, thank you. There's a guy. Yeah. And it's not just like, because
there's also yoga guys.
Yeah. You know, and that was, and listen, for me, it was great as like somebody who eventually did want to teach. Yeah. To know that there was somebody else out there and who looked like me, talked like me, had the same interests as me, and still could do this stuff. Like it was a huge deal. Yeah. For me. And so like, you don't come from like your parents didn't do yoga, you know, like, no. You know, it's like you didn't grow up in it, you know, your parents were monks, like, or like, you know, you're not a, you know, upwardly mobile person from the suburbs that got into yoga because they need to get away from their kids. The second part might be a little true, but like, that's not your story. No. And so like, I always found it fascinating. Yeah. I mean, but because you got in through Dhyana, right? Yeah. Dhyana Yoga in Philadelphia. Yeah.
So one of my good friends, John, he was married to Dhyana, and he tried to get me into yoga in like 1997. And I was like,
what were you doing in 97?
I was taking a lot of drugs. I was doing a lot of drugs. I was 18 years old and we lived together, and he was 4 years older than me. I was really into martial arts and he was into yoga and spirituality and stuff like that. And I've always been like a seeker, like when it comes to spirituality. Like I've always like read books about religion, philosophy. Like I eat that shit up. I love learning about philosophy. I love talking about it. I love having those conversations. And me and John always connected that way because out of all of our friends, me and him had the same like kind of soul when it came to like, there has to be more than this shit. Like there's got to be more. Like how can we find more? So me and him would do like martial arts together. Like then he got into yoga and I got into martial arts, and like he was like getting books at the library about yoga and like reading about like sniffing in, you know, like the fabric and like flossing your nasal passages and shit. Like he was getting into all the weird stuff, but he was like getting into like, he was like learning about yoga, and he went more towards yoga and I just went towards martial arts. So like I just did, you know, Kung Fu and Wing Chun and like Muay Thai and all that other stuff. And he was doing yoga, and then he eventually got certified and all the other stuff and was teaching. And so he was my first like friend, and then he tried to get me to do yoga a lot, and I was like, dude, no, it's so stupid, there's no way I'm doing it. Like I want to learn how to kick people's asses. And he showed me this video of this guy named Duncan Wong, and Duncan Wong was Madonna's yoga teacher on one of her tours. And it was the first time I ever saw anybody press into a handstand in yoga. And it was like, he showed me a video on YouTube and I was like, and he had his style was like yogic arts or whatever, where he like blended some martial art, like Qigong, Tai Chi stuff in with yoga. And I was like, well, I can get down with this shit. This is pretty cool. He's doing crow pose and headstands and fun, like weird kicks and stuff in yoga. And I was like, all right, cool. I bought his DVDs and started doing them in my living room. And I was like, oh, this is really awesome. This is really fun. And then that's all I did. I still never went to a class. And then it was after my kids were born. I mean, they were probably only a few months old. And then I took my first actual yoga class in the studio. And that's when everything changed.
I mean, what gets you out of, what gets you out of doing yoga in the living room to taking a class? Like,
with the kids, really. Yeah. So it's like, well, because I couldn't do anything like, because martial arts is so structured and it's like you have to show up consistently all the time. And like when I had twins, so it was like my time frame to do things was incredibly small. So I needed something that was more a la carte, that I could just like show up. If I had 4:30 on Wednesday, cool, I could go in. Then I have Sunday at 8 a.m. Cool, I could go. Like, it's not just like, you know, trying to force something to work because it wasn't working. And I still skateboarded and everything in the interim, but it's like, I was still staying active, but like something in my soul was like not like something wasn't getting worked inside of me that needed to get worked. And so like the martial arts did that before. And unknowingly the yoga was doing it while I was doing it at home. It was like helping me stay like grounded and spiritual and like connected with my higher self. But I didn't know that's what it was. And my kids were probably only a few months old. And I think it was the first time that I was able to get out of the house with them, because, you know, going out of the house with one kid is really challenging. With two, it's like impossible. And then like 3-month-old twins, I'm like, my aunt like is a saint and going to watch them for an hour or 2 hours so I can go to a yoga class. So I take them to and it's like fucking snowing out. It's like a blizzard and it's in Philly. So I'm like, oh, no one's going to show up. There's 45 people in the class. And this is pre Lululemon. There's no guy yoga stuff. This is like 2009, 2010. And it's in Old City and it was an advanced class and I didn't know. I had no idea. And so my friend John is teaching it and he's like, come to my class. You'll be good. I'll set you up. You'll be good. I was chewing gum the whole time. I forgot to spit my gum out before class started. I didn't bring water. I forgot my yoga mat and I was wearing like Adidas swooshy pants with like the fleece on the inside. Nice. Yeah. And then I had a regular just cotton t-shirt on and I was like, wow.
So you stepped back out of the blizzard and froze all the way home.
Basically. No, but I took that class and it was like, he was like, half of it was in Sanskrit. I was like, I didn't know what was going on. But I do remember when we chanted the first time, it was the first time that I ever did like Om in a room before. And in the beginning of the class, it was nice. I was like, okay, this is cool. But then when we did Om at the end and we did a mantra, I felt like that Om like shattered something inside of me. Like it made me feel something that I'd never felt before. And I just remember walking outside and it was snowing out and I felt like I was like in a snow globe, like someone like shook a snow globe up and I'm in like Old City, Philadelphia. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. And I was just like, oh my God. Like I want everybody that I know to feel like this. Like it was like my coming to God moment kind of where I was just like, I felt connected. I felt balanced. I felt like nothing could shake me all of a sudden when I was very stressed out from having kids and a job and not sleeping. I felt really, really, just calm for the first time. And I was just like, oh my God, my first thought was, I want everybody else to feel like this, not myself. And I'm very selfish. So it was like an odd thought to even have that I wanted other people to feel that, not me, that I didn't think about me first, that I thought about others. And so I went home and I texted him right away, like, yo, what books can I read? Mm-hmm. And he was like, I'll give you The Heart of Yoga. And he gave me The Heart of Yoga by Desaguchar. And that was it, dude. And then the next week I went to class again and he told me about a teacher training. And I was like, where do I sign up? And he was like, okay. And he's like, you'll graduate by this time next year. And I was like, cool, graduated one day before my birthday. And I was teaching before I even graduated because I was just like, when I'm into something, you cannot give me enough information. Like everyone else is like crying in teacher training and like losing it every single day. And I'm like, we need more info. Like, why are you wasting time? Like, let's go. Like, we should be practicing. We should be learning. Why are you so sad right now? What is happening to you? So it was just a really interesting moment for me to it just literally pedal to the floor. As soon as I took my first like in studio yoga class, I mean, I practiced on my lunch break at my grandmother's house. I practiced in the parking lot outside of my job. I practice anytime that I can practice. Anytime my kids were sleeping, I would practice. Anytime I can get to a studio, I would go. Like I just made it happen in my life. I was addicted to it completely.
Okay, I mean, cool. That's the idea in yoga, like bhakti yoga, but most forms of yoga, right? Like it's that concept, right? Of like, how can I help other people?
Yeah.
And it comes from, I mean, I know for me, like it came from that place of like, how do I used to call it to people that didn't take yoga, that, well, this is like people I worked with. I mean, what's this thing you do?
Oh,
like this postures. All I would do is I would say, I got very good at describing it very simply, which was it gives you spiritual armor.
Yeah.
Like it gives you that ability to go out in the world, and on occasion, it doesn't work every time because we're fallible. Mm-hmm. But like when it does work, when you're doing it right, the practice allows you to be very even.
Yeah.
To just take what comes, mm-hmm. And it comes from that deeper understanding, right? I don't control everything. I'm not the center of the world.
Those are all great lessons.
I've learned all of them. So at this point,
I'm still trying to figure out that I'm not the center of the world and I'm 45.
Let me know when you get there.
Yeah,
41, right. I still struggle.
Yeah.
But all of those lessons mm-hmm. give you that ability to be super, super even.
Yeah.
And the applications of that are mind-blowing.
And everything, I mean, dude. It literally translates over to everything that I do now. Yeah. And like now I get it. Like I didn't get it when I first started, where people will be like, oh, well, your practice is off, your practice is off. Like they give you that shit and you're like, okay, what are you talking about? And it's like, well, you're just not there yet.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, then you go through loss, and then you go through grief, and then you go through love that you've never felt before. And then you go through, being of service to somebody, and you start to feel these things and you go, oh, my practice is in everything that I do. I get to have this really amazing opportunity to live by virtues as opposed to living by my emotions or by my vices or by my lower self. You know what I mean? Which is a battle I think that every single person goes through, regardless of your spiritual knowledge. We all still have those things inside of us that we're trying to make sure that they don't get the best of us. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that's at least that's my battle with yoga, is making sure that my lowest version of myself doesn't do all the talking and all of the fucking texting and all of the action, or I end up in a place that I don't want to be at, that I was at in my 20s or even in my 30s, even with yoga when I first got into it. I mean, when I became a full-time yoga teacher, I was almost at my worst, to be totally honest. Like when I met Raghunath, that's when I was literally someone asked me about when I met him for the first time the other day. Mm-hmm. And I told them the story of how I met him and where I was at in my life, and meeting him changed my life, but it also triggered a chain of events that were the worst case scenario for my life. Not to put anything bad on Raghu.
No, but so this is what happens, right? You start to realize, you have all these realizations of all right, maybe I'm not the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not in control of everything.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of anxiety that comes with that. Right?
Oh my God, a ton of it.
You start, because what it forces you to do, I know this is Kastuba. I had this conversation with him in India, and I remember, I tell this story often, and he was like, I remember telling him, I'm in India. I'm at an ashram. I've been here for 2.5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And I went, listen, all these monks, some of them are really super educated, went to our version of MIT, in India, could go
incredibly intelligent.
Could go into run Google.
Yeah.
And instead gave up everything, came from great families, and they're here. And I would learn, because I talk to them and I hear their stories. And I said to him, these guys have nothing.
Yeah.
They own nothing other than the robes that they own. And and I was like, and they're all really happy. And I said, here's my problem.
Because you got to have a problem with it.
Let me tell you my problem with them being happy.
Yeah.
Like,
totally.
Here's my problem.
That's how you know you're not happy.
Well, this is the problem. I was like, I thought I was happy.
Yeah.
I came here and I was like, my life is great at 34 to have everything anybody could have. I have a great life, but I don't have that.
Yeah.
And that I know is happiness. That's real joy.
Yeah.
Like, that's pure, unadulterated joy.
It's not joy you bought.
Yeah.
You know?
And I was like, so how do I get that? And Kastuba goes, never forget. He's just like, well, he goes, do you believe in God? And I said, what does God have to do with this? I'm a yoga teacher training. What is, like most people who got brought up in the punk scene and all that, it's like, why
you're anti-God almost.
Why?
Like you're forced to almost be anti-God if you're coming up in that punk rock, hardcore, metal. Like it's like, no, it's everything but.
And because it's that idea of like screw authority. Yeah. And that is the ultimate authority. Ultimate authority figure. So like if I'm giving the finger to authority, I'm giving the finger
of cops and God.
And so
I love cops. I know a lot of cops.
You know what? Actually, I never had a bad interaction with cops.
Well,
I really didn't.
Skateboarding, I had tons of bad interactions with them, but I've always just been super laid back and just realized, dude, they're just doing their job. We're not. And I don't know if it was like some yoga thing that I knew, but I'm like, we're trespassing, guys. Like, what do you think what do you think's going to happen? Like, we're not supposed to fucking be here right now. We're destroying all their property. Of course they're mad at us. Let's just go. We don't have to put up a big stink.
Anytime we would get like a cop would give us trouble, I would usually be the guy that like, all right, you got us.
Yeah.
All right, I'll leave.
Let's
whatever.
go, man. Let's just get out of here. Yeah.
We're in a warehouse running a show.
Yeah, you're in Stalag 13 right now.
Yeah.
You should not be here.
Yeah.
You're in a squad house.
What a great club.
You can't call that a club.
No, what a great place to go.
What a great place to drink 40s and smash bottles and do drugs. It's good. It's fun.
And then the Kill Time. I don't know if you ever went to the Kill Time.
No.
That was like post Stalag, sort of around the same time in the post was the Kill Time, and that was like, just another warehouse.
With squatters in it. Yeah, good shit.
Same thing.
So ultimate authority.
So he's like, do you believe in God? And I said, well, I'm not atheist. I said, but let
me skirt around it.
Let me tell you about God. Stuba.
Yeah.
I was like, he's a jerk. He kicks me when I'm down. He dumps a ton of crap on me when I can least expect it. And I was like, so, here's the deal. I don't have I believe in him, but we don't talk.
Yeah.
We don't talk.
Yeah.
And he just sort of nodded. He went, all right, let me ask you one more question. Do you like yourself?
Oof.
I was like,
it's
like, and I was silent for, it seemed like 20 minutes. It was probably 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I sort of like look at your shoes furtively, look around like, okay, how do I get
Because the immediate answer is.
It's like, how do I get out of this conversation that I started and this is all my fault?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't think that I do.
Yeah.
And he said, do you think that's a problem? I said, yeah, that's probably a problem. Because when he asked me about God, he said, do you think that's a problem? I was like, I don't know. I'm like, maybe. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
He said, do you think that's a problem about liking yourself? I said, yeah, that's definitely a problem. He said, why don't you try something for the next 2 weeks here? Just try it. It's an experiment. If it doesn't work, it's fine. Why don't you try to be somebody God wants to get to know? Mm. And that was that same like standing out in the snow. That was that light switch where I was like,
yeah.
Because immediately what that practice asks of you is to take an inventory of how you treat people.
Yeah.
And how you start dealing with people around you. And when it's like somebody pulls that veil off where you're like, I'm a decent person. I'm nice to everybody. I don't judge anybody. Yeah. Everybody else judges, but I don't judge. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they pull that veil off and you're like, oh my God, every word that comes out of my mouth is the most selfish thing ever.
Yep.
And so that practice, that practice, changes your life.
Yeah.
I have you to thank for that. That's one of the reasons I wanted to drag you on a podcast. So I can embarrass you. Thank you. Because I took my teacher training And that was interesting. That was like sort of the access point. It was good. And the teachers were great.
Yeah.
The studio was great.
Yeah.
I mean, I still teach there to this day. I'm still friends with the owner of that studio. Cheryl's great.
Yeah, they're amazing, dude. Yeah. They've been my friends for years, dude. Yeah. All the people that you came up with were awesome people to come up around, like as a yoga teacher, for sure.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, I remember thinking, like, I don't know. Do this. I didn't want to teach. That was the first thing. I was like, I'm not here to teach. I'm here to learn handstands, non-balances.
I love new yoga teachers. You're like, I don't want to teach. Bullshit.
That. And then my first class that I ever taught, because you had your test out class.
Yeah.
And so everybody had yoga friends.
Yeah.
And you'll get this better than most, but like I had punk rock friends. I had Billy who weighed 300 pounds, couldn't touch his toes. He was like,
guys in socks. Like,
I'm going to come to your class to support you, man. And you're like, please don't come to my class. Please don't support me. Because that's the most
terrifying. Tell your girlfriend to come to my class. You don't come to my class.
Because that's the most terrifying thing as a yoga teacher is to teach a beginner. Somebody who's never taken yoga before. Yeah. I remember people I was with, their test out class, I was like, you guys are cheating.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows how to do
seasoned yogis. Yeah. They say anything and then they do anything.
Right.
It's easy.
And then I had all these people. I had like 12 people in my test out class. 3/4 of them had never taken a class before. And I got done and I was like, I just did hard. And Cheryl's like, you're really good with beginners. Do you want to teach a beginner's class? I was like, sure, I'll teach a beginner's class.
Yeah.
And so that's how I learned to teach, was by teaching beginners, which at the time I didn't know was like the best way.
The best way to learn how to teach. Yeah, dude, it's great. I got the easiest job. I teach people who know what they're doing. Shit is super easy. I love it.
It's great.
I taught them crow pose last week for the first time in like 11 years. And I was like, I'm sorry, guys. They don't know how to do crow pose right. And I'm like, I'm the worst teacher ever. I'm like, you guys, I think you just all know how to do everything. So I just say do it. And then you just kind of do it. And I just poke and prod you a little bit, but I'm like, I never actually taught you how to do it.
And I started going to your studio, and I remember asking you, like, hey, there's these different paths of yoga, and I've tried some of them, but like, what's this bhakti thing? I don't know if I'd like it. I don't know if I'd be into it. Mm-hmm. It seems a little woo-woo, but like, if I wanted to learn about that, where do I go? And you told me, buddy of mine who I taught with, his name's Daniel. He teaches over in Philly. His studio is Palo Santo. Go to that studio. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of my practice really skyrocketing, because I went there.
Yeah.
I met him. He did kirtan. I hated it.
Yeah.
I loved the hard class. I hated kirtan. But I couldn't get that melody out of my head.
Yeah.
And then I went back 6 months later, and then I started, going to his classes. And then I wanted to know, as you do, like, okay, well, who taught this guy? Mm-hmm. That's who's his teacher. And then you start to get into stuff with some really great people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I have all of that. I mean, it doesn't happen if I don't walk into Yoga Rebellion and go, hey man, like, I think I'd hate this, but if I wanted to learn about it, where would I go?
Yeah. That's cool. I appreciate that, because I was talking to a friend about it the other day, because she's like getting into bhakti and just like asking questions about it and stuff like that. And like we had the conversation where Raghunath was in, and he was like, why don't you come to India? And I told him, I was like, I have no desire to go to India. I have no desire to go to India.
No, you will not spend a month.
Which is class. I told somebody that, and they were like, you have to do that. And I was like, dude, there's not one part of me that wants to do it though. But, because like you guys, because I've seen so many of my friends, I've pushed a lot of people into bhakti. Like I've given people I've been like, hey man, here's the door. You can go through that door if you want. Sure. And I know I could go through that door too, but I know that it's the wrong door for me, which is sometimes I have to grapple with, because like I listen to the podcast. I love bhakti. I love the Gita. Like I love all the wisdom that comes with it, but it's like, there's some part of it where I have like, I don't want to say a disconnect, but it just feels like I'd be inauthentic to myself. And I feel like I'm honoring myself more by knowing what I love about this practice. And what I love is helping people go to where they want to go. I find myself to be more of like someone who can direct people in the right directions, instead of being like going all in on this one thing. And like, this is where I stand. It's like, well, I kind of stand here and I can pivot around and go, well, I have a broad knowledge of this practice and the practices that feed into it. Well, it's like, okay, cool. Well, you like this? Well, you should go here. Oh, you love alignment and anatomy? Well, here, I know this woman named Alex. You should go fucking hang out with her. She's incredible. You love the energetics and the biomechanics? Go to Three Queens. They're incredible, but they still have spiritual knowledge. Like good teachers are good teachers. So it's like, for me, it's like, well, how can I get these people who already care about the practice a lot and help them go further into it? Like I was talking about it last week with my students, like it's about going deep. It's about like the further down you could go into this practice, the higher you can grow from it. And it's like, if you have a shallow root system with it, then you're never going to go anywhere, but it's like, whichever path you go, just go deep. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like just follow it as far down as you can. And if bhakti is your thing, then man, fucking go to India, do all the things, bathe in all the rivers, do it all, man. If you love that, I love that for you. That doesn't resonate with me. What resonates with me is like, how can I make this practice? Because I still have to have a practice,
right?
So I can't get lost in this yoga teacher identity that I think I am, because then I start to become separate from my practice. And it's like, then all of a sudden it's like, I'm a different version of myself. So lately I've been coming back to my practice of like, what do I love about this practice? Like, how is this practice enriching my relationships? How is it enriching me as a person? Is it enriching me as a person, or is it making me worse? Because it's still not worse, but like ego. Yeah. Ego feeds into it,
I mean, you get really, I remember right before the pandemic, Daniel was leaving Palo Santo.
Yeah.
He was moving.
Yeah.
And he was like, I want you to take all my classes.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is it. I've made it. I've made it.
I am doing the guys' classes. That's me. He asked me.
The head teacher for the studio is like, take all my classes. And for like 2 weeks, I felt like a superhero, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, nobody's teaching any classes.
Yep.
I don't even know if this thing's going to work anymore. And
it's heavy.
Yeah, I mean, but the ego, I mean, it's so interesting. The ego just it wraps onto whatever it can.
Yeah.
To make itself feel puffed up.
Yeah.
And then I feel fortunate in my life that oftentimes when that happens, I don't believe in chance anymore, but whatever, source, divinity, whatever you want to call it, usually cuts me down at the knees pretty quickly.
Pretty quick. Right then and there. Yeah. It's
like, hey, nice try.
Yeah.
You had your fun. Did you enjoy that week? Okay.
You thought you were pretty cool. You're not. You're not that cool.
You're actually not that special.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Which I think is good for yoga teachers for everybody to, not that you shouldn't think that you're special, but you choose to realize that things are just things
you're not
change.
In control.
Yeah, you're not. You have as much, it's like grabbing a handful of water. It's just going to go right through your fingers every time. You think you're going to get a big handful of it, it's gone. And I know that with yoga, like with me as a yoga teacher, it's like, it could just go. You know what I mean? Like like as much as I love everything about it, but I think it's in that beauty. That's what Raghunath taught me. It's in that beauty, like that I know that everything is impermanent now. Mm-hmm. Like that was like my moment with him. Like if that was my defining moment as a person, I think was my interaction with Raghu. That was it. That changed the entire trajectory of my entire life. I don't know where I would be right now if I didn't sit in that room with him one day, because it was just him talking about death. Which, well, not even death, but just like having somebody look you in the eye and just very frankly put it, like, you're going to die one day. Like, what are you doing with your life? Like, what are you actually doing with it? Like, it's not going to be here forever. Like it's, I always equate it to the Fight Club quote, because I love Fight Club, so I love that movie. So, and the book, yeah, and book, obviously, right? Yeah. I know a lot of people were like, the book's better. Okay, I didn't read the book. I love the movie.
You know that movie got booed at every film festival?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible.
What's it called? Brad Pitt stood up to Edward Norton after the first time they showed it, like Cannes, and it got booed, and he was like, "That's the best film I've ever been in."
Yep. Yeah. Well, there's a line in it where he's like having this interaction with Tyler Durden, and like Edward Norton and Brad Pitt are having this interaction. He grabs his hand and he kisses it, and then he pours like lye all over it. And it's like burn. He has this chemical burn, and he's freaking out, and he's like grabbing his hand, and he's like, no, you have to be here. You have to sit with this right now. And he's like, you have to know, not fear. You have to know that one day you're going to die. And that's like what kind of pinged in my head. Cause it's like, it's the inflection of like, you have to know, not know. You have to know. Like there's a difference. There's a difference between knowing where I'm like, yeah, it's going to happen. Then it is definitely going to happen. And that's like the feeling I got when Raghunath was like talking about that one day, because I was just like, and it was already a long 10-hour day of like the gunas and kirtan and all this other heart opening stuff and asana practice, and him going over like stuff from the Gita and talking about this death, and just like everything was welling inside of me to this point of like, I'm so unhappy. I'm so incredibly unhappy with my life, and something has to change because I'm going to die one day with this feeling. And like, I don't want my life to be strung out in this feeling like this. So I went home that day after he said all those things, and I went to my ex-wife and I cried to her and apologized to her about how terrible of a person I've been to her, how my words had hurt her and my actions had. And I hope that she can forgive me, and that I was absolutely terrible as a human being to her, and tried to just like throw myself at her mercy, regardless of whether she forgave me or not for whatever I did. And I went into work on Monday and I quit. And I was like, I gave him notice because I'm not totally stupid. So I went into work on Monday and I was like, January 3rd, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm like,
you're working at this man.
Right? Yeah. So I was a printer and I had a really good job, man. I'm stable. I was vested in the company. I had 30 days off a year. I had a 401k. I had the most banging benefits package you could ever want. And I was like, I don't want any of this. I work 3 minutes from my house. Like, I could fucking ride a bike to work every day if I wanted to. It was an awesome job and I worked with awesome people, but I was miserable because there was nothing behind it. And every single person that I told was like, you're an idiot. You're so stupid. Why would you leave that job? You have like the best job in this room besides being like the supervisor of this room. Like, you have the best job. You get paid the most. And I'm like, I am the most miserable. I'm like, I'm going to die one day. I'm like, I don't want to die here. I start looking at everybody around me and I'm like, this guy has high blood pressure. This guy has cancer. This one has gout. Like, what? Who gets gout? What is this? The 1400s? I don't even know what this shit is. So, a few months after that, after I gave him my notice, my wife asked me for a divorce. And so I was like, well, I could stay at my job. Like, I didn't leave yet and they want me to stay. So it's like, I had this like little, hey, this little like, hey man, you could stay.
Hey, you take backs.
Yeah. Like, oh, you really want that? You really want to change your life? Are you sure? Are you sure? It's like, well, it's like when you try to quit a job and they're like, well, we'll give you $10 more an hour or something, like we'll throw in 10K. We'll give you a week's vacation. Don't leave. And you're like, okay. You know what I mean? Cause you can get bought off. And I was like, fuck you. Nope. I was like, I'm still doing what I want to do. I was like, okay, January 3rd is still my last day and I'm still going to be a full-time yoga teacher. And I was, and I worked every single day. I taught 17 classes a week. I didn't take a day off. I worked every single day, like literally every single day. And luckily, like through Instagram and stuff like that, I made good connections. I was able to do workshops at places. People were paying me to travel to their studios to teach. So that was like a huge blessing to like make me a bunch of money and to like get me out more into the world. But my kids were young. My kids were like 3 or 4. And so I had to like make the decision eventually where I was like, I don't want to keep doing all this running around and not being around my kids. And I'm already getting split from my ex, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I'm living in an apartment. She's living in the house. We're doing all the things and like we co-parent really well. So it didn't matter, but it was still like a hard time to go through, like for me emotionally and as a yoga teacher to like serve and be going through emotional pain at the same time is really, really challenging. And I was still drinking. I was still smoking cigarettes. Like I was still like, not taking care of myself. And so I got to a point of where I was like, I have to get a regular job because it's like, I don't have health insurance, dude. I don't have anything. I taught for a year. I gave it a good shot and I was like, okay. And I got a job for like 2 or 3, 4. I think I worked there for like 4 months. And then I started teaching yoga again full time. And then maybe a month or 2 after that, I opened my studio and just like full bore went into being a yoga studio owner.
Well, yeah, it was yoga.
Yeah, and that's when I opened Yoga Rebellion. And the first Yoga Rebellion was the most Fight Club place you could ever go into.
I remember.
It was tiny, dude. Like there was a spot in the floor that felt like you would fall through it if you stood on it wrong. Like it was not made to be a yoga studio at all. It was not like if you were over 5'5", you were like hitting the awnings that were in there. It was deathly hot in the summer and freezing cold in the wintertime. You could see, if you were on the floor, you could see the outside. You could see where the bricks, like there was separation in the foundation.
The only piece of like accoutrement in that entire room was a red bench across the wall. That was it. No shelves.
There's nothing.
Were there hooks on the wall? I think there was.
There was,
yeah. There were like hooks
after a little bit.
On the wall,
That's it. Yeah.
And like a red bench.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because Fight Club is. I mean, I've loved that movie since the first time I saw it.
Oh yeah, it's great.
And I remember that was the first thought I had the first time I came to that studio. I was like, "Oh, this is Fight Club."
There's like holes in the walls. Yeah, it's dirty.
This is where I need to be.
Yeah,
like this is it.
It's where you care about practice, not about aesthetic. You know, because dude, I'm not an aesthetic guy anyway. I don't know how to like do all that stuff.
No, I mean, I used to when I first started teaching. I used to playlists and stuff. I don't even use music anymore because one day I was like, I am spending more time figuring out my playlist for a class than I am figuring out what the hell I'm going to teach. Yeah. What is wrong with this picture?
I just have a playlist of 300 songs, and sometimes people ask me like, "What's your playlist?" And I'm like, "You don't. It's unhinged. Like you don't even know what you're going to get, dude. It's like I'll just like, I like the song. I'll put it in my yoga playlist, and it's like wildly inappropriate for a yoga playlist, but."
I mean, then that probably says that how many classes I've taken your spot because I've definitely heard repeats.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
300, that means
you're there quite a bit. Then you've at least been there quite a bit.
Yeah, well, 2 kids, like it's a little tougher. Like, and,
that's the beauty of it, though. Yeah, and that's like why I look at my practice differently now, where it's like it's not that I don't value the physical asana practice the way that I did. It takes a different shape for me. So it's like, I don't need everything to be incredibly intense anymore because my life is, I'm not saying my life is intense, but I already have intense things I have to deal with 2 teenagers and life and single dad status and shit like that. So it's like when I practice, I want my practice to be nurturing. And it's like for a lot of the people that come in, that's the nourishment they need though. Like my students, they need that nourishment of like a hard practice because that's sometimes the hardest thing they're going to do in the day. They got to sit at a desk. They got to fucking commute or something like that. Yep. So it's like, they want that hour to be like hardcore. But for me, it's like, I do jujitsu, I skate, all the things I love to do hurt my body. So it's like, so all the things I love to do want to hurt my body. The last thing I need hurt my body is my yoga practice, like my asana practice. So it's like, yeah, I'll do some handstands still. I'll work on that, but it's like arm balancing and like trying to have a knockdown, drag out, sweaty practice. I'm like, it's a once in a while thing that I like, and I like to just relax in poses, yin, use blocks, use bolsters. It's like all day. I love it. I was messing with Brandy today and telling her like if she had Instagram, she'd be forward fold Brandy. Like that would be like her Instagram. She loves doing forward folds. And I'm like, so I love it. I like you just sit in a forward fold 10 goddamn minutes and call it a day.
I think for guys, for women too. I'm just speaking because I am a guy and I know it better. I don't know what it's like to be a woman.
Yeah.
There's that intensity that you want to bring to something. I don't know whether it's primal or whatever. And most people, maybe it's just driven people. Let's just say that. It's driven people. You find this intensity that you want to bring to something, and it shifts as you get older in your life. Like when I first started practicing, that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, same.
Handstands, arm balances. Yeah. And I wanted to be known as the arm balance guy. And then I became known as the arm balance guy.
Yep.
And then it's funny. I got back into lifting a lot, which I used to love.
Yeah, I remember.
Got out of it.
I remember, yeah.
And so I got really back into it. And all of a sudden, I practice at home now. I practice yin every morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I will teach you a handstand and an arm balance, and I can do that. But, like, when my students will ask me, well, what do you do at home? I go, I hold supported bridge for 10 minutes.
Yeah. It's what you thought like your mom used to do for yoga. Like when she would go someplace and they would just kind of hang out for an hour. Like that's my yoga practice. It's bolsters, blocks. I'm hanging out. I'm laying there.
And the stuff that gets me excited is to go teach philosophy now.
Yeah.
Or to go, I'm going to do a kirtan tonight at Palo Santo.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Like, it's going to be great. Like, I can't wait to get in there. Because that's the stuff that changed my life. But the asana practice, the physical practice is what got me there.
It's a catalyst.
But for that, none of that probably takes hold.
Yeah.
And so,
you have to have your body under control for your, like, so your mind will follow it. Like, what's the Stoic, there's a Stoic quote that talks about that, where it's like, you have to like discipline your body so that your mind will become disciplined as well. Right. It's not the other way around. Like, as much as you want to say like, I can discipline my mind, but it's like, dude, if you can't make this physical vessel do what you want it to do, then you can't make any part of you do what you want it to do. Like, you have to be in control of your body. So I think like the asana practice is an important part of it, because I get in arguments with people online. I don't do it as much as anymore, because people are like,
like a losing proposition.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, yoga's not about sweating and all this other stuff. And I'm like, what? As a whole, like if we're looking at Kriya Yoga, we're looking at like the entirety of having an actionable yoga practice, then you got to take action. Like, if your body is sick, that's the first thing that's going to mess your practice up. Like when we talk, like when Connor came back with, a parasite and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's like, it shows you that sickness, when you get sick, your practice your spiritual practice gets really tough really quick if you didn't have a strong body. And I think for him, like, having a strong body, he was able to stay the course with his spiritual practice because he had already had an established physical practice. If you're just sedentary and then you get sick and you think you're going to have a good spiritual practice left, it's really challenging. Like, it can be done, but why wouldn't you try to stack the odds in your favor to be connected as much as possible?
Well, your body, I remember one of my teachers was in India. One of the well-known Bhakti yoga teacher was in India one time, and one of his friends was like, you bring all this money you put all this money out through the United States, founding all these schools and doing all this stuff. But when you come in and distributing all this literature and philosophy, when you come back to India, you just feed people. Why aren't you distributing philosophy here? Why aren't you teaching here in India what you're teaching to people in the West? Yeah. And you just looked at them and said, how can people learn if they're hungry?
Yeah.
In other words, if your body's in pain, if you're hungry, if you've got migraine headaches, how are you going to...
Base survival.
How are you going to open a book and learn
base level survival?
How are you going to listen to somebody saying something? Yeah. Like, I can go down, it's like you can go to Kensington in Philly and tell a drug addict, hey, I know you're in a lot of pain right now, but it's all temporary. This is all temporary. Right. It's eventually going to go away. Maybe this life's not even so important. You've lived many lifetimes, and
it's going to not ease their suffering.
You know what that drug addict's going to do? Yo, do you have any fentanyl?
Yeah.
No.
Do you have any money? Yeah.
Yeah. Money, fentanyl, cigarette. Like, no, goodbye.
Yeah.
So,
but that's why the service of like everyone who goes down there to feed them is like so great, because that base need of like a warm meal that's made with love, that's like made with like something in it, dude, like all of a sudden that gives hope. Like that gives that does so much for a person. Just like you can give a person hope just by holding space for them, So it's like, there's all these different ways that I think that we can try to get that base level of like as yoga teachers to like make people healthy on this base level, so that if they want more, then they can get more. But it's like, we got to like give them a foundation. You got to give them something to start with. And an asana practice is a great way to get them to start on the path to go deeper into it, instead of like shitting all over it. You know what I mean? Because that's what ends up happening is people just, so the first place I worked at, Dhyana Yoga, I remember talking to the owner Dhyana one time about it. And we were talking about like how there was so many yoga studios at one time. Like, I consider myself so lucky that I grew up in like, I started teaching in the golden age of yoga, where there was like studios everywhere. And I mean, you could go to any studio in Philadelphia and you had a tenured yoga teacher with like a philosophy degree or an AP degree. Like, they were incredibly intelligent they sequenced well, like they gave a shit. And it's like, I remember all these studio popping up and like asking the woman who owned the place. And I was like, does it like bother you? And she's like, no, because it means there's more people on the path. She's like, if they're practicing, that means that like they can go further. Like that's a good thing that more people are practicing. Yeah. Is it kind of like, if what they're teaching them can traumatize them or like get them like sour on the practice, which sucks, but you hope that it doesn't happen. You cross your fingers that they're getting something good from it, because man, if that person goes home who just does Baptiste yoga, they go and they do power yoga, they do eagle, airplane, all the shit. But it's like, dude, if they go home and they're nice to their kids when they would have been freaking out, cool. Like, that's great. I want more people like that. Like, it shouldn't be, oh, well, you're not practicing yoga because you're just going to a hot yoga class. It's like, well, no, dude, there's a way to kind of like, they're starting to dig. Mm-hmm. Like they just got a little spoon and they're just starting to dig in. You know what I mean? It's like me and you got excavators eventually. We're like, how far does this hole go? Oh my God, I want to go to the depths of it. But it's like, some people are just like, they're just starting to get in there. And if that's as far as they go in this lifetime, cool.
I mean, I remember right before the pandemic. Do you remember Lee, who was in my teacher training, tall girl? I'm trying to remember her last name. I'm friends with her on Instagram. We talk occasionally. But she used to be the head teacher for Lifetime.
Oh, okay.
And so she ran the whole yoga program.
Yeah.
And so right before the pandemic, and she was great because I'll never forget, when I was trying to we were getting close to our test out class. And so I wanted to practice on somebody. Mm-hmm. And practicing with your wife, at least my wife, you don't want to do that because she would be like, "You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. It's not like the teacher." And yeah, of course, of course it's not. I'm not a teacher yet. I'm not even good at this. Like, so eventually, I was talking to Lee one day, and she said, "Well, look, you go to Lifetime to lift. Why don't, after you get done, I get done a class. Why don't you just run me through, a sequence, and mm-hmm. we'll just do that, a couple times a week. And by the time you get to teach, you'll have done it. And you can give me assists." And she was already a yoga teacher. She was just taking another training.
Yeah.
And so it was invaluable to me. And I remember I was giving her an assist, and I think she was in like child's pose. I was just trying to like put my hands on her shoulders and just give her a little bit of traction. And she goes, "All right, stop." I'm like, "What did I do wrong?" She said, "You're being creepy." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "You're being creepy. All right. Go in with purpose, leave with purpose."
Yeah.
I can feel you hovering. You're creepy. She goes, "Don't be creepy." Yeah. I was like, all right. No, but anyway, noted. Don't be the creepy
Every guy yoga teacher, take that advice. Don't be creepy.
Yeah. Don't be creepy. Yeah. Just be like a surgeon. You're a doctor. You're going in, you're putting your hands on somebody. Don't look deeply and lovingly into somebody else's eyes. Just like get in there.
I'm not a surgeon. I just don't touch anybody.
Yeah. I give assist to my students that
I've had to know you for at least 10 years.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
All right,
that's how it goes anymore. We're getting close. I'll put my hands on you soon.
Okay. Anyway, so right before the pandemic, I remember her calling me. It's like all the great yoga stuff happened to me, and then the pandemic happened. Daniel gives me these classes. She calls me. She says, "Hey, I really want you to come teach at Lifetime. Mm-hmm. Would you consider taking a Saturday class? I know you have a job, but..." And I remember thinking, well, I'm teaching at Palo Santo. This is a very spiritual place. Lifetime is the opposite of that. It's a fitness club.
Yeah.
And I told her I'd think about it, and I remember thinking, I'm not freaking teaching there. I'm not teaching. I'm going to go in there and talk philosophy, and all these people are going to get angry, and they're going to get upset. It's like, that's what the mind does. And literally 2 days before the pandemic, I had this realization. I called her back, and I thought, wait a minute. Who the hell am I?
Yeah.
Like, those people in that room, this might be exactly what they need. Yeah. Or not. But like,
totally.
Who am I to make that judgment?
Yeah.
Like, and I called her back and said I would, and then of course the pandemic hit, and Lifetime stopped teaching yoga, and it didn't matter anyway.
You don't have to worry about it anyway.
But I remember,
but it put you through the motions of like trying to figure it out for yourself,
and it brought me to this realization of, I'm glad that every gym has a yoga class taught by somebody who's maybe not great, maybe they are great. It doesn't matter. Because if somebody gets into down dog and goes, why is it called down dog? and then they Google it, and then they go on Wikipedia, and then they realize it comes from this guy named Krishnamacharya and a lot of these poses. And then they go, well, what was he? Well, he was this guy who was into this thing called Vaishnavism. And then they look up the Bhagavad Gita. Like, that's a very reasonable set of circumstances that can happen. Yeah. And it can literally change somebody's life.
Yeah. It changed my life.
Yeah, it changed mine.
And so it's, I think sometimes we forget that it is a powerful practice.
Right.
And I try to remind myself of it. And I should remind myself of it a lot more now that I'm saying it out loud, that like, and I was literally telling somebody yesterday, I'm like, I'm so lucky. Like, that's like my mantra. I try to keep it as my mantra as much as possible. As shit as life can happen, bad shit can happen in life. I try to remember just like, how lucky am I, dude? Like, how lucky am I that I get to, like, when people ask me what my job is, that's what I get to tell them my job is. And they're like, what are you doing today? I'm like, I'll teach yoga class from 9:30 to 10:30. Then I'm going to go skateboard for a little bit. Then I'm going to go home. I'm probably going to take a nap. I'll do some dishes. I'll make some food for my kids. And it's like, that's my life. It's like, that's an incredible fucking life. And it's like, well, yeah, I had to work really hard to get to where I got to. And it's like, and it's still not an easy life to have, but I'm very lucky that like I found someone in my life who introduced me to crow pose. Cause that's what, like, I was like, oh, we're doing crow pose. And I was like on microdots. I was like, no, seriously. I remember the first time John like taught me any yoga. We were living together. I was 18. I think I took 2 hits of mescaline, and I was like, we're doing like shoulder stand and crow pose and like plow and stuff like that in our living room. And it's like, I'm like, this feels crazy, dude. This is awesome. And it's like, then me and him, then we like move out. Like I moved back with my mom for a little bit. And I remember like just sitting I had like this little side of my bed, and I would do plow, shoulder stand, and fish pose. Cause when I would lay there, it would feel like I was like in like a recliner almost. And I would just like take a little nap after work. Like I would do shoulder stand, fish, and plow, and then take a little nap, feeling all good on the floor. And it just got me to keep doing it. And like, it made me interested in it. It made me think that it is something. And then like I had someone that I could share it with who'd be like, oh, well, there's also philosophy behind it too. It's like, oh, I love philosophy. What's the philosophy of it? Then you start reading about it and you're like, oh my God, what about my mind? What about the kleshas? What about, you're like, oh shit. And then you like, all of a sudden you walk into this new world of being conscious. Cause I think that's the biggest gift, is going from matrix to non-matrix, right. Like, and I can't tell you how many times I wish I could get back in the matrix. Like I wish I could be that evil dude in the matrix every once in a while who just wants to go in and eat a steak again. Like he just wants to go back in. But it's like, as much as that's just my fear. That's just my fear, or my fear of inadequacy, or my ego, or a part of me that's just like feeling overwhelmed at the expansiveness of like this whole experience that we get to have, that like there's so much to this experience and it ends.
Yeah. It's over.
And I think about that so much. It's like, and people like my friends who are still in the matrix will sometimes be like, man, you talk about death all the fucking time. And it's like, well, not that I talk about it all the time. It's just something that I'm very conscious of, that like, it just happens. Like it literally just happens. Like I almost got into a car accident like 3 weeks ago at 7:00 in the morning, right? 7 a.m. I'm driving to Wegmans on a Sunday morning, and I'm going through a light, like the light turns green, me and another car go. This box truck just flies through the red light, and literally goes right past me and clips the other car that was going.
Jesus. And
I'm like, if I wasn't like messing with my radio, I could be dead at 7:00 in the morning on a Sunday, and my kids are at home sleeping while I'm going to get some like 5 things at Wegmans. And it's like, they're 15. I'm not a bad parent. They're 15. they can be left alone. But I'm like, it's those moments that make you just go, holy shit, dude. Like it could just end at any time. So it's like, keep that in the forefront of your mind and start like making decisions from that a little bit more, as opposed to these decisions of like, what are people going to think of me?
Right.
Like, I have to make this person happy, or I don't want to do this because I'm afraid that I'll fail, or fuck, I might succeed. It's like, yo, who cares? Be silly, be weird, do what you love to do. And guess what? Everybody's going to forget anyway. And in 100 years, no one's going to know who you were. They're not going to breathe a word of your name. You'll be nothing. So get weird, have fun with life, enjoy the shit, like enjoy the things that you love to do, make bad art, sing poorly, write good songs, whatever. Like it's such an inspiring, I think, way to live your life instead of being like so scared to leave a person that you hate or to leave a job that you don't like or to move across country or just, I tell people all the time, man, I can't tell you how many people I told to quit their job. I'm like, just quit it. Go ahead. It's your path. Yeah. Like, and then if you don't, it's not your path. Like you have to have faith all of a sudden. And that's something this practice has given me in spades is faith, is realizing that like even the bad decisions I make are good decisions.
Right. Well, they're leading you to someplace.
Yeah.
If you're cognizant enough, you can learn from them.
Yeah. But it's hard. It's a hard lesson.
Usually.
As I complain about it all the time.
Yeah, it's usually a hard lesson. I mean, it's so, I never thought really hard about death until I had kids.
Yeah.
The minute I had kids, because for me, I remember when my daughter was born and I thought, she's going to outlive me.
Yeah.
If everything works out right, if this thing plays out correctly, she outlives me. And
that's the goal.
All of a sudden, it was like, yeah. And you know what'll happen the day after I'm gone? The sun will still rise. She will mourn me, maybe, I hope.
Yeah.
But in a year, she'll miss me. But she's not going to be thinking about me every single moment of her day.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like,
sobering.
I get it. I mean, and that's, and what I found is the way you practice keeping that in the forefront of your mind, it's the little things that you do.
Yeah.
I am, as much as I can, I'm the first person she sees every morning.
Yeah.
I wake her up in the morning. I wake them both up in the morning. And I read to her every night.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Because I realized.
Because it's not going to be there one day.
One day it's not going to be there.
Guess what? I have a 15-year-old daughter. I used to read to her every night.
Not anymore.
I don't read to her right now. Well, she's like, get the fuck away.
It's funny how you measure things in life, too, because I used to go away for work. I used to love to travel for work.
Yeah.
Be like, all right, I'm going to go to the UK. I'm going to get off that flight. I'm going to Amsterdam for a day. I got a meeting there. I'm going to grab a car. I'm going to drive down into Germany, and then I'm going to grab a flight out of Munich, and then, or Düsseldorf and fly home.
Yeah.
And I was like,
now it's like,
and now it's every day that I'm not at this house at night, whether I'm traveling, whether I'm just out late doing whatever, whether I'm out late at a kirtan.
Yeah.
Every single day I'm not home is one day less I get with those kids.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a day where they don't want me.
Yeah.
To see them.
It's an L, dude. You take an L.
Right.
So there's a guy named Dr. Peter Attia who wrote this book. What is it like? It's about own lifespan. But regardless of that, he was talking about time with your family, and he broke it down from a year metric. And he's like,
I've heard this.
He's like, okay, if you have kids, and people who have kids, think about this. He's like, you have 19 years with them.
Yep.
And he's like, because you have the first 18 with them, if you're lucky, right? You have all 18 years with them. And then if they move out and that, they go to college and all that other stuff, he's like, from that 18th year to 19th year, you will spend 1 year with your children from the time they leave when they're 18 to the time that they die, or the time that you die. So it's like, that's Christmases, that's Thanksgivings, that's your family parties, that's birthdays, like, so you get the first 18 stacked in there and you're like right on top of each other. And then the last year you get spread out over 60. Over 60 years, you're going to spend 1 year with your kids after 18. Like that to me broke my heart. I was like, oh my God, I have to spend every moment with them. I have to I'm going to get every last bit of juice out of the squeeze. So it's like when they want to, like tomorrow morning, I'll wake up early and I'll go skateboard with my son, which is like something I've been doing with him since he was little anyway, because that's what me and my friends do. And then I was like, okay, well, me and my daughter are going to make a cake. And she's like, what do you want to make? I'm like, I don't know. Let's just make a cake. And she's like, cool. I love making cakes. I'm like, let's make a cake. All right. It's like, you want to make a cake? Let's do it. You want to go here? Let's do it. Whatever you want to do, let's do it. And there's another dude that I follow named Jesse Itzler, and he talks about that. Like, he always says yes to what his kids, like if they want to do an activity, like, hey, Dad, do you want to go throw the Frisbee? Absolutely. Let's go. Hey, Dad, do you want to go for a walk? Absolutely.
It's a good philosophy.
It's a really great philosophy where he's just like, he always says yes to his kids when they want to do something with him, regardless of how tired he is, no matter what his day, there's no excuse behind it. It's like, yeah, okay, you're on death's door dying, like, and you're like super sick. Yeah, you can take a little nappy, but if you're just having a regular day and it's 7 p.m. and your kid's like, hey, Dad, you want to read to me? Absolutely. My son wants to watch a skate video with me. Sit down, buddy. Let's do it. I'll turn off whatever I'm watching, what Parks and Recreation for the 90th time. Let's go ahead. I'll watch a skate video with you. Or my daughter wants to show me a weird reel of raccoons. Said, let's do it. Because it's like, I'm not going to get those moments. And I think that's one of the things this practice reminds me of more. Like, it all comes back to yoga for me, all of it. Because if I didn't have that yoga practice, like, what are the chances of a regular person, like, having that awareness that they're not going to be like with their kids that much, or mortality, or all, like, because the practice is always giving us all these virtues to live by, and like bringing us into the present as much as humanly possible. And it's so hard to attain that if you don't have practices. You know what I mean? And I went on another podcast with my martial arts instructor about it, where we talked about having, like, how hard it is to do better for yourself without practices. And it's like, dude, if you're just going to work every day and coming home, eating and going to bed, and like, that's your life, it's like, it's going to be really hard for you to see the beauty that's surrounding you, because it's like, you're not actively searching for it. You're looking for like something on the weekend. You're looking for something in the future. You're looking for a vacation to make you happy. And it's like, no, I'm happy when I'm watching a skate video with my kid.
Well, there's a real beauty in things that are temporary.
Yeah.
Because
that's the absolute beauty of it.
I mean, think about, things that are rare and temporary. We seem to value more than, something that's
permanent,
common, right?
Yeah. What's the movie Troy? Like, there's that, like, with Brad Pitt. Even though people like shit all over that movie, I love that movie. It was great.
It's a fine movie.
But he was talking about, like, when he was talking to the female actress, and I forget her name, but he was like, the gods envy us because we're mortal. Because it's like that's the beauty of this ride that we're on, is that it ends. Yep. But it's like, okay, well, if we start to consciously connect with that through our practice, then it's like, then everything becomes beautiful, all of it, right? And I, like, not to be like a cliche yoga teacher and like someone who goes through all the mental illnesses that a human can have. It's like, it's hard for me to find gratitude in depression, but I do, because it's like, well, if I can feel this low, then I can feel this good. You know what I mean? I can feel the adverse of it. So it's like, I try not to, like, when I find myself in pits of depression, or, the skyrocketing sensation of anxiety, I go, well, I know this is going to come down, and I know this is going to go back up. And I know that, like, this is all going to end. And like, I'm really lucky that I have the ability to feel this much. And I don't view it as like an ailment. You know what I mean? Like, I don't view my depression or my anxiety or OCD tendencies, or like ADD, as like things that prevent me from living a life. It's just I live a very extreme life. And that's, some people, I was thinking about the other day, because I just kind of snapped out of like a depression that I've been in for a little bit. And I was like, man, I'm really lucky that I get to have these highs and lows, because some people, it's just like vanilla. And I'm not trying to make mental illness sound like a great gift, but I have to, because if I don't, then it's my weight that I hold on to until I die, So it's like, I'm trying to look at the things that I go through as temporary things, and also things that I can learn from. Like, I've learned from my anxiety. I've learned from my depression. I've learned from my ADD. Like, these are all tools in my tool belt, just like I have a yoga practice, just like I have a breathing practice and a meditation practice and therapy and all these other things. It's like, they all can enhance my life if I look at them correctly. And if I'm honest with myself about them, instead of like trying to hide them, or like, just like when you ask me how I'm doing, sometimes I'm like, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be completely honest. I'll be like, dude, I'm not doing good.
I mean, you had this, I remember there was like a year at the studio when I was coming regularly, and maybe it was because I was a teacher, and you can kind of tell. And I was like, I just remember thinking, something's not right.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
Like, it's just, there was something. I mean, you were going through something.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, totally.
And you could, and I could tell, because I took classes with you a lot. We were around each other a lot.
Yeah.
But you were still teaching.
Yeah.
You were still positive to the students that you saw.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is the thing that's what that's what mental fortitude can do for you. That's which is what this practice gives you a lot of, is you start to see things as, how is this working for me rather than against me? What is this teaching me, rather than I'm a victim of circumstance? You know, like, rather than, and again, you know, people that have mental illness, it's tough. People are in different situations.
Yeah. It's a spectrum.
You know, people struggle more. They don't have resources that some people have. The whole thing. But just being able to say, I'm not going to be defined. I mean, what the yoga practice teaches you, or one of the things it teaches you, is you're not your body and I'm not my mind. Like, I may be very attached to them. I may have an identity wrapped up in them, but ultimately my body's going to go away. My mind changes every 5 minutes. So is that really what I am? And if you can get to that point, even a little bit, you start to understand, like, well, if I'm not my mind, then all of the things that have happened to me don't define me either.
Yeah.
I can change how I think about myself.
Right now.
I have a choice.
Yeah.
And I choose every second of every day to think that I'm doing great or I'm not doing great. I have a choice.
Yeah.
There are things in life that complicate that. There are things out of my control that complicate that. But how I react to those things, that's me.
Yep. Exactly. And I was like talking to a friend about it today, about me going through like all the mental stuff that I've gone through over the last, 20 years, because I've had anxiety for a long time. Depression has kind of showed up.
How do you do that? And like, I mean, how do you have, because I know when I throw a mat down in your studio and it's not in line with the wood grain, like, you have like a twitch in your eye.
I'm pretty OCD about how people set up in the studio. Yeah.
But like, how do you have all of that running around in your mind, dealing with that? You're going through, like, I know that you and your, well, she's your ex-wife now, but you guys split.
Yeah.
And then, like, you quit your job and then you open a studio. Like, how does that even freaking work, dude?
Well, me and her reconciled then. The first time back then, we reconciled our marriage and we got back together. And that's when I opened the studio after that. Gotcha. So I had some support from her.
Some stability.
Yeah, I had that stability again, but I still had to sell everything that I owned to open my studio.
Talk about a lesson in temporary, and things being
sold my motorcycle, sold all my weights, sold everything that I owned. I had terrible credit. Luckily, the guy who was the landlord was a really, really great guy, and he was like, "Don't fuck me over." Like, looked me in my eyes, and he was like, "Don't fuck me over." I was like, "I will not. I will pay you 2 days before the first every single month. I will keep this place clean. Like, I will do everything I can to not screw you over. I swear to God." And I didn't. I paid every single month on time, and I had to make money right away. It's not like one of these businesses where you're like, all right, we're going to be in the red for a year, and then we're going to make a profit maybe in year 3. I was like, no, I have to profit right now, immediately. Like, I have to immediately make a profit. I have to immediately pay my rent, and I have to immediately pay my body. I'm the only teacher here right now, so all I got to do is pay my fucking mortgage, and that's it. So I just right away taught every single class that I could teach. Taught 5 days a week, 6 days a week, paid my teachers. Anybody who taught for me, I don't think I had 2 teachers at first.
Who were the first 2 teachers?
The first teachers I had were Alyssa, who owns Homegrown. So she taught for me on Fridays. I think the other teacher I had, sorry if you taught for me and I forget who you are right now. It was Alyssa. She taught for me.
I remember Alyssa.
It was me and damn, I forget who else was the other teacher who taught there with me at first. I want to say, my friend Lauren, I think she taught for me. Lauren Landgrebe. She taught on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
And then when I moved into the Red Bench studio, that's when I had a full staff. So that's when I had 7 or 8 teachers. Now I just got 2, man, or it's just me, Brandy, and Emily now. So that's it.
But I mean, like, starting a new business.
Yeah.
And then all of the
emotional components outside of it. Yeah.
I mean, like,
it's challenging, but it's like, if you're inspired to do what you want to do, then everything gets a lot easier. You know what I mean? Like, all of a sudden I was living for something. You know what I mean? Like I was like, my business was my family. Everything that I was doing was something that I absolutely cared about. So it was like the business that I had, I loved and I threw myself into. And then my family, I loved them and I wanted to be with them every moment that I wasn't in that business. And then I tried to work. Then every ounce after those kids, it was me and my ex trying to make everything work between the two of us. And then, yeah, things got good and then things get bad again. And it's like, and then it just, everything goes up and down and rides the waves that it does. But emotionally, I was supercharged because I was like, well, I get this second chance. I was like, this is like, it's like I lost everything that I had. Like I had my coming to God moment, my second biggest moment, I guess. So the first one being Ragging out telling me I was going to die. And then,
that's pretty big.
It's pretty standard for who he is. The second one was after me and my ex-wife had split. I finally got enough money to get an apartment, and I had an apartment above some friends, and I didn't have enough money for furniture. So I was sitting on the floor, and it was like the end of the day. I just got done teaching, and I was sitting on the floor, and I had a coffee table, but no couch, no TV, no anything. I had a bed. And I was eating pizza on the floor, and I was watching Sons of Anarchy on my phone because that's all that I had was my phone. And I was sitting there eating a piece of pizza, and I was like looking around. I had like one like really sad light, like from like a track light. And I was like looking around, and I was just like, dude, what the fuck did you do? Like, what did you do to your life? Like, look at you, man. Like you had so much, and you just like you did this. Like it was like a moment where I really had to take ownership for the fact that like I did a lot of wrong. And like I was sitting exactly where I was sitting because of me, not anybody else. There was no one else to blame but me. So I was sitting there and I was like, damn. And I was like, well, all right, let's not be like a sad sack about this right now. Like, well, you know what? I'm like, at least I have an apartment. Like, I was like, I'm not like couch surfing on my friends' couches anymore. I'm like, dude, you have an apartment. Like, you have enough money for food. Your kids are safe. You and your ex are still amicable. Like, I have a job that pays me well enough that now I can afford this apartment. This is really cool. Like, this is great. Like, I have some stability. Like, yeah, it might not look like it used to, but like I have something. And it was like that moment of like just a little bit of light getting in a crack. You know what I mean? Like everything got so dark in my life because I was also drinking every day. I was like smoking. I was not treating myself well. So like having a moment of like, just like that little bit of light coming through the shade, I was like, well, you know what? I'm pretty grateful that I have this stuff. And then it immediately snowballed into so much more gratitude where I started just listing everything that I was grateful for in that moment. And then at the end of it, all I wished for was that my kids were safe and that my ex was going to be happy. And I actually felt like in my soul that like I wanted happiness for everybody else, but like, cause I knew that would free me, you know, like of being like, no, ultimately I just want you to be happy and I want my kids to be happy. And so from that moment on, I just lived my life like that. And then everything fucking changed because finally I like learned the lesson that like, I was the one who was messing shit up and I should watch what I'm doing. And two, I wasn't as pious as I thought I was. I wasn't as good. I wasn't the person that I was thinking I was. And then when I finally felt it in my soul, then I was like, oh, no, this is what it really feels like to love another person when they don't love you back. Because that was my whole thing was, you know, okay, well, how can I want the person that I spent, like that I created a life with to be with another person? And I'm actually happy that they're with another person. Like I have to become very, like not selfless, but I have to be very comfortable and have faith that everything's going to like work out.
When you love somebody, you want the best for them.
Exactly.
And that's what
which proved to me that I didn't love them for quite a long time.
Right.
And that was like, it was jarring, but at the same time, it was like, well, okay, well, no, I do want the best for them. And in that moment, I mean, everything shifted when I found that my mood shifted, the way that I carried myself through life shifted. You know, I started meeting people that like were supposed to be in my pathway, that were good people who got me away from all the bad shit that I was doing. And I was able to like really put the blinders on and be like, oh, well, this is the direction I should go in now. And then everything started moving in that direction.
Well, it's that concept of like service too, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, when you love somebody, you want the best for them. You'll do what you can for them.
100%.
And there's something really, I mean, it's counterintuitive, particularly in Western culture. It's totally counterintuitive.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember.
It's like, what can I get from you?
Yeah. What can I get from you? What can you do for me?
Yeah.
I give you this, you give
me
me
that. Yeah, man. There's an exchange.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. I mean, I love you, but do you love me? Because if you don't love me, I don't love you. I don't know that I love you.
No, it's true.
And I mean, I remember, when we had our second daughter, I don't know if I ever told you this. I mean, I almost lost Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she almost died.
Oh my God. I had no idea.
Yeah. So we had our second daughter, and our daughter was great. But then afterwards, she kept bleeding, and they couldn't stop it.
Oh, yeah.
And they put like 23. So the human body, I'm probably going to get this wrong. But the human body has about 10 units of blood in it.
Mm.
And they put 23 through her.
Oh my God, dude.
And they took her to
surgery. Fucking frantic.
I mean,
oh my God, what do you do? Like, how do you like hold space for that, man?
Well,
oh my God.
It's funny. What happens, at least what happened to me was, I mean, it's a longer story, but so basically everything, it went from 0 to 60.
Oh, I can imagine. 2
doctors in the room, and they're sort of like doing, they're doing what they do after your wife gives birth. There's things they got to sew up, stuff they got to do. And then all of the sudden, it went from like 2 doctors and a midwife to like 16 people. I mean, as I remember it, it was like that.
Yeah.
Like 16 people daisy chaining igloo coolers. And I'm like, I mean, it happened so fast. I didn't even have time to be like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I knew that she had kept bleeding because they were working on that, but they didn't make it seem like a big deal. So then the attending physician, she's kind of telling me what's going on. Look, she's bleeding. We don't know where it's coming from, but she's losing blood. So we just want to give her a transfusion. We want to make sure we have enough here. Mm-hmm. I know this seems like a lot. We're taking every precaution. And so initially I thought, okay, this is like, I'm a yogi. Let's keep a calm mind here. Yeah. This is a reasonable explanation for what's going on. They're being overly cautious. How lucky am I and fortunate that we're in a hospital that's taking precaution. But then it kept going for like, I don't know, 45 more minutes. And so my brother-in-law, who happened to be working at the hospital, he was a doctor. It was his first day at the hospital. I called him and I was like, hey, what are the questions I should be asking that I'm not asking? He's like, well, I'm here. Do you just want me to come up and talk to the doctor? I was like, yes, I would very much like you to come.
Someone who knows exactly what they're talking about.
So they go and they talk, and I kind of pick up a little bit. And my and the doctor, so we had to meet in the lobby. He couldn't come like into the room. So I'm in the lobby, and the attending physician goes in, and I go, John, you and I have known each other for a long time, and just be upfront with me. What's going on here? And he says, well, there's sort of 3 scenarios. Bobby, your wife's bleeding, and she's not clotting. They don't know why she's not clotting, but the more that she bleeds, the less clotting agents there are in the body. So it's this vicious cycle of you keep bleeding, you clot less. So he said, so they're pumping her full of clotting agents, but they need her clotting numbers to come up. And I said, okay, well, so how's this work? He said, well, there's sort of 3 scenarios. The first is they want to send her to the IR, the radiology room, and they want to go into her vein, and they want to inject this. I mean, modern medicine's fascinating.
That's
they want
great,
to inject this foam into her veins that's going to then plug it from the inside rather than
like construction foam. Like, what are we talking about? You get it
apparently it goes away after 24 hours. Like,
okay.
But like in other words, instead of trying to patch it from the outside, they're going to go inside, and it won't matter where she's bleeding from. It'll just find it and like.
What? That's crazy.
Like, that's nuts. He's like, but they have to cut into her femoral artery, and she's not clotting.
Yeah.
And so she could bleed out by doing that
really quick. Yeah.
So they need her numbers to come up so they can take her down and do that. I was like, okay. He's like, if that doesn't work, if they do that and she's still bleeding, they're going to give her a hysterectomy. Mm-hmm. So that means no more kids. You're done. And at that point, I'm like, great. Okay. And that will solve it. He's like, yeah, that should solve it. Okay. We'll deal with the other part later. I was like, okay, so what's the third scenario? He goes, well, the third scenario is her numbers don't come up. I was like, and then what? Well, then they keep pumping her with blood. And then what? And I remember he just sort of looked at his shoes and I said, you need to tell me right now if there's a greater than 5% chance that I'm a single father when this is all over. And he goes, never forget. He got like a little choked up. He goes, it's a lot greater than 5%.
Ugh.
She's really young and strong, but you should probably have those conversations with yourself.
My God, dude.
So I walked back in to the room And I just looked, and my daughter, my newborn, Freya, is sitting in the bassinet next to these 16 doctors doing stuff. And all I could think of was, and this is crazy because like she's not going to remember it on any conscious level.
No.
But all I could think of was,
like energetically, like
I don't want my daughter's first day to be this.
Yeah.
And so I walked up to the attending who was like, we're doing everything we can. I said, we came to this, we were in Jefferson in Philly. I was like, we could have gone to Virtue and Cherry Hill. We could have gone to these hospitals. We came here in case something like this happened.
Yeah.
I said, I know you're doing everything you can. So I'm going to do the only thing I can do. I'm going to go be a parent. I'm going to take my daughter. The room next door is empty. Just call me when you need me.
Yeah.
So I just took my daughter out. I held her. I like hung out with her. I slept for like 20 minutes or I don't know how long. And then they knocked on the door and they were like, hey, her numbers came up a little bit. They're not where we would want them to be, but we're going to take her for surgery, or we're going to take her for that. We're going to cut her open. She could bleed out. She had an epidural, so she wasn't feeling anything, but she was awake for the whole thing, and white as a sheet, literally like white as a sheet.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody so white. And so they said, she's awake and aware. We asked her if she was okay with this. She agreed. We don't need you to sign anything, but we want you to understand this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So they wheel her out. I grab my daughter. I would like give her a kiss. I let her, see her daughter. And they were like, there's a chance that she bleeds out.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. So then I go to the postnatal room, where you're going to like hang out for the next couple of days. And it's just me and like a newborn. And I got to tell you, my first daughter, I was not good with newborns. I was not.
Well, yeah, you're untrained. You're untrained. You don't know what to do. You don't know what diaper is. You don't know why they're crying.
And so like
no
Bobby
skills.
did a lot with the first one.
Yeah.
But I was put, much like your point of like, you have no other choice, right?
Yeah.
You either, this is a pass-fail test. This is not multiple choice.
Right, yeah.
You either pass or fail.
And you gotta pass.
And by the way, failure's not an option.
Yeah, and you gotta kind of pass.
And so I'm sitting in this room with my daughter, who thank God slept a lot.
Yeah.
And there's nurses around, but they legally won't let you leave the room to watch your kid. Like you have to be with the kid. And my mom and my sister didn't get there for about 4 or 5 hours. So I just sat in a room with my daughter and I did everything you're supposed to do with a newborn and all the time thinking this could be your entire life. You better start getting used to this. By the way, you're going to go home. And if Bobby's not with you, how are you going to explain to your 3-year-old?
Yeah.
Mom didn't come home.
Yeah.
What do you tell your newborn when she's 9 or 10 and she's old enough to consciously ask the question, like, tell me about mom? You tell her like, hey, your mother loved you so much.
Yeah.
And she got to hold you and you fed off of her before she went down and you were the most important thing in the world. Like all of that goes through your mind. And so when, Bobby came out of it and she was in the ICU for a few days and then eventually we got to go home. And after a couple of days, she couldn't keep any food down. We were like, okay, this is weird. And I remember saying, look, you've got an infection. Let's just go back to the hospital.
Yeah.
Let's get this. Let's have them run you through antibiotics. Let's not mess around with this. Let's just go back. So they run her through antibiotics 2 days in. So at this point, her mom's home. She's watching the kids while I'm in the hospital with her. But then I want to be there in the morning because mom's not home. And I want them to have a parent there in the morning and a parent there at night.
So you're ping-ponging.
So I'm ping-ponging back and forth. I'm not sleeping because there's a newborn in the house. And she's,
and you have a young kid at the same time.
And like,
it's just chaos.
And so I'm getting no sleep. I don't know what's wrong with my wife. She almost died. And all my life was literally laundry, putting stuff away, doing dishes, eating occasionally when I could. I didn't get any sleep for myself.
Yeah.
When I slept, it was because I needed enough hours to do all the other things that I needed to do for everybody else.
Yeah.
And then they found out that her uterus was necrotic. It was dying.
Oh my God.
And they're like, you could have gone into sepsis. You need to have a hysterectomy right now.
Yeah.
Right now, this has to happen. So like the next morning, they went through the process and her doctor was great. Dude had a vacation in LBI while this was all happening, drove back to the hospital every day from LBI.
Wow.
to see her every single day.
That's incredible.
A total gentleman. Can't say enough good things about that whole hospital staff.
Yeah.
It's bad when you're walking in and the front guard with the neck tattoos and hand tattoos, who's the coolest human being in the world,
Yeah.
but totally like Philly,
Yeah.
downtown Philly, is like knows you by your first
Yep.
name. I remember saying to her, she'd be like, "Hello, Mr. Healy. Hey, Bob." I'm like, "Don't take this the wrong way. I wish we didn't have a first name relationship."
The fact that I'm seeing you this much and then we're on a first name basis is not where I thought my life would end up.
She's like, "Yeah, I get it."
Yeah.
So she got home, and the recovery period was a long time.
I can imagine.
So that's what my life was like.
Yeah.
And the point I'm getting to, which you brought up, is I never felt more fulfilled in my life.
Yeah.
Never felt. I was bone tired. I was the
Yeah.
most tired I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
Now, I've done all natural bodybuilding. I've, gone on pilgrimage and eaten very little and fasted and all, and practiced yoga 3 times a day,
Yeah.
and like whatever. This was the most tired and exhausted I'd ever been in my life. And every night I went to sleep totally satisfied. Like
empty. The tank is empty.
There's nothing else I could have given. And on some level, I'm so happy that this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I realized at that moment, because I thought about it, why? I should be miserable right now. I should be freaking
Thank God
miserable.
you weren't miserable.
I should be falling apart. I should be miserable.
Yeah.
I should be angry,
Yeah.
angry at the doctors, angry at God. Like, and what I realized was, this is what service does.
Yeah.
When you're of service to other people, that's where satisfaction comes in, because
It's like inexhaustible.
Because you're no longer the center. And the minute, as counterintuitive as it is to the Western culture, the minute I pull myself out of the center, all of a sudden I start getting satisfied. All of a sudden my cup starts filling up.
Yep.
And it's actually not a physical thing. And it's actually not all the things I thought were going to make me happy, because everything I'm doing is manual labor and menial and things that on a normal day I freaking hate doing. Dishes, laundry.
But it shows you where your heart is at, if that's what you're getting upset at, that you have so much laundry, that you have and I'm not saying those aren't things that can get in you, get you irritated every once in a while, I think it's how it's all your perspective. Because it's here's an incredibly terrible part, a really beautiful part of your life, but then at the same time, a really scary part of your life and it's both the spectrums at one time that you're living. You're coming home to a sweet newborn baby and your other baby. Then you have to go and process maybe losing your wife in the same moments.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the juxtaposition of that. But that's such a human thing to have to realize.
100%.
It's sometimes I think we, in our culture, we gloss over it because we're so separate from everything. In other cultures, I think they're so closer to death or so closer to life. There's so much more intricate, interwovenness in their families and their family units. So these things become more common of going through these larger event cycles, right? But for us, it's to have to deal with that all in the same day could crush a person if you don't have good practices and if you don't have and it doesn't even you have to have a good mind. You just have to have perspective.
It's the thing, mastery. I have a great teacher who says mastery is doing the same thing over and over repetitively for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Because what that does is it weaves it into the fabric of your life, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens is it becomes muscle memory.
Yeah.
And so oh yeah, I'm going to be fine in happiness. I'm going to be even in happiness and distress, right?
Yeah.
And, when somebody doesn't move 3 seconds in front of me in traffic, bringing it back, I get pissed.
So it's
but when shit really hits the fan, all of a sudden you're I just put my head down. I do what I have to do.
Yeah.
And I don't get off kilter because because this is just what you do.
Yeah.
That's when you know that all that hard work that you've put in, all that practice that you've done really has taken hold somewhere very deeply in your life. Because when it kicks in like that, you're not thinking about it.
No, it's because you have to be of service to whoever you're in front of. And in your moment, it's your service is laundry. And sometimes my service is I have to teach a yoga class when I'm depressed. So it's it correlates to whoever and whatever situation that you're in, I think. And from just the human perspective, it's good to kind of remind ourselves of that. that the fact that you still do show up and do the thing despite what you're going through,
Right.
you know, and it's like, well, you know, cause I had people ask me like, well, how can you like teach a yoga class when you're going through like something like that? Or you're going like, cause it's easy to teach a yoga class when you're going through something really great in your life.
Yeah.
It's like super inspiring, but you know, what's just as inspiring? Loss. Like not having, like going through grief, going through heartbreak, going through a job shift, going through separation, going through whatever. As tough as those moments have been, they've been like some of the best things for me to like think about and like really try to understand how it can have a positive impact. Because if I don't, then it wins.
Right.
Like
then you become defined by it.
Exactly. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe I am really anxious about my kids going to the school, or I'm really anxious about them being successful, or I'm anxious about my business, you know, doing well or not doing well. And then whatever my mind state is, like from this practice perspective, I can pull out and go, okay, well, if all of these things are happening, like if I'm going through this, other people are going through this too, for sure. So there's a way for me to take what I'm feeling, whatever it is, good, bad, sideways, good, sad, whatever, and go, okay, well, how can I breathe this into the practice? Like cause there's, dude, in all the books, man, it teaches you how to get through all of it. You just have to know where the nuggets are. So it's like when you know how to deal with the anxiety, when you know how to deal with the sadness, when you know how to deal with loss or like really hardcore things, and you're going through them, it's an opportunity for me to teach from that perspective. Just like everything you told me just now about what you were going through, as tough, and you would never want a person to have to go through that. Think about like all the inspired like Dharma talks, and like think about the inspiration that breathes into your life, and like how you can connect with other people because of it.
I mean, again, it's the little things. It's like I tell my wife every morning without fail that I love her when she wakes up.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because I remember every morning that there was a real reality where I wasn't going to get to do that anymore, and I don't ever want to forget it.
Yeah.
Like every morning I do that, and she asked me this. We were in California together for something earlier this week, and we woke up. I was like, hey, I love you. And she goes, you tell me that every morning. Are there mornings where you don't love me? I said, I never don't love you. There are mornings where, you know, we're not getting along as well as we might wish to. But I said, but as much as it's me wanting to tell you that, it's a reminder for me that this is a privilege.
Absolutely.
That I almost lost.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to go back to being that guy who took it for granted.
Yeah.
And so every morning, this is a very simple practice that reminds me that
I can't think of a better lesson for, it's a hard answer. It's like, why did it have to be like taught in this way? But at the same time, you learn it. And my grandfather taught me that. So like I say, I love you to my kids whenever I leave, whenever I see them, everything like that. And now my son has gotten so used to it. My daughter's just like whatever.
She'll get there.
She'll get there. But I tell them anytime that I leave, I always tell them I love them. Anytime I go to bed at night, I tell them I love them. And like with my son, I say it to him, like, because like even as men, like we said, like, we're like, is it okay if I tell people that I love them? Like, but it's like, but absolutely. Because my grandfather would always tell me that he loved me whenever we were not going to see each other. And I remember asking him one day, like, why do you say that to me? Like all the time, you just drop me off at school. You're just doing this. You don't have to say it every time. And it's just like, no, I want you to know in case this is it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if this is it, then the last thing that I said to you was I love you, not something else, you know, like, so that for me was like, oh, well, I want to make sure that I tell people that I love them. And I tell my friends I love them now. I tell a ton of people that I love them now, because it's like, no, if I love you, like the last thing I want you to know for me is that I love you. And I think that's a really amazing lesson that all this is like taught me, is like to be more connected to people, to not have that weird feeling of like, I remember the first time I told one of my friends I loved him, right? Like one of my guy friends. And it was like totally by accident. I was like in my car and he came up to the window, and we were all out of sorts and we were going somewhere, and I was like in my mid-20s, and he came up and he's like, all right, I'll meet you here. And I was like, all right, man. I'm like, I'll see you there. I love you. And he was like, and he like turned around and looked at me and he's like, what? And I was like, dude, I'm like, I don't know. I said, I love you. I guess by accident. He's like, I love you too. And I was like, I love you. And ever since then, we say, I love you every single time we talk to each other. And it's like, it's not a weird thing, because dude, you don't want to go through life without people knowing that you care about them. Yeah. And I think that's super important, because the last thing I would want to have happen is go away from this earth and people wonder if I cared about them or anything like that, or vice versa, So it's like, I think it's important that we, have practices that make us like think like that, to like really dial into the really minute, important things that are the most important things. I can't think of a more important thing in my life than letting my kids know that I love them, just in case, like literally just in case. It's incredible.
It's a good way to end it.
I think that's a really great way to end it.
Where can people find you if they want to hang out with you, talk to you,
Man,
yell at you about the physical yoga practice?
You could always come to my studio, Yoga Rebellion in Collingswood. You could follow me on Instagram as TheTattooedYogi, which I'm going to change my name soon. I'm sick of this shit. Yeah, I'm tired of the name, dude. I'm so sick of it, dude. It's so dumb. But TheTattooedYogi on Instagram.
That's who you are. That is your identity.
That's the first time, ragging out the first time I met him. I was in Down Dog. It was that same weekend. I was in Down Dog and I never met him before. And he came up to me in Down Dog and went, "Are you the Tattooed Yogi?" And I was like, I fucking hate this. I fucking hate the internet. This is the worst. So yeah, Tattooed Yogi on Instagram, or Yoga Rebellion is my yoga studio's Instagram. Come practice with me in Collingswood. Love to have you guys. You can follow my Patreon, or you can take yoga classes on there. All the good shit.
Awesome, man. Thanks for hanging.
Dude, thank you so much. I love you.
Love you too, brother.
That's all for today's journey down the Offbeat Path. Hope this episode's inspired you to forge your own unique trail. And if you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe, please share with a friend, and definitely leave us a review. Your support helps the community grow. Remember, the road less traveled is often the most rewarding. Till next time, this is Bob Healy, encouraging you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and above all, keep forging your own unique path. See you on the next episode.